the laughter, the footsteps through the hallway. I'll never forget the challenges.
Every day I come back from work, it's always like this. We're yelling in front of the kids.
I'll never forget the help we needed. How far we've come.
Are you low on food? Struggling to pay the bills? Overwhelmed by life's challenges? When you need support but don't know where to turn, just dial 211. 211 connects you to the programs or services near you.
211, how can I help you?
211, help starts here.
You're watching Rogers TV.
Hello everybody, my name is Jason Piercey and welcome back to another episode of Straight Out of the Foggy Vault. Tonight, we're going right back to 2007, where our very own Mr. Paddy Daly, very finely dressed, very fresh face, looking good. He has a conversation with, because of course, Paddy Daly, whether you know this or not, has a hockey history. It's kind of how he got into broadcasting, into TV. He was a very talented player. And he has a conversation on this episode from '07 with one of, if not the, definitely one of, the most impactful people in all of Canadian ice hockey history. The statistics are undeniable when it comes to their performance. Points per game in international plays, like over 2.5. Like that's it. That's insane. That's crazy. We're talking about somebody who has more world championships and Olympic medals, and currently has evolved into a resident physician and assistant general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, by the way, are the most valuable, like if you would praise as a business, the most valuable team in the NHL. This person is the assistant general manager and has such a background, and their legacy in hockey and ice hockey in general is undeniable. And given the amount of time that I have been spending recently thoroughly enjoying the new PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, this seems like such an apt and appropriate conversation to haul out of that foggy vault so you can get reacquainted where some of this evolution into the PWHL started with one of, if not the greatest of all time, the one and only Hayley Wickenheiser.
Everybody, and welcome to the show, TGIF. I'm Paddy Daly. Chrissy Holmes is enjoying a well-deserved day off. Hope you have a nice weekend, Chrissy. Anyway, we have a special guest in studio tonight. Arguably the greatest female hockey player in the world, Canadian hockey superstar Hayley Wickenheiser. Hayley's obviously one of the most driven players in the game, man or woman, and her stats back it up. She's the first woman to compete in a men's professional hockey game, 3-time Olympian, silver medal in Nagano '98, twice gold medalist, Salt Lake and Torino, who could forget those, and in my mind, the gold medal game in Salt Lake City, 2002, one of my favorite hockey memories of all time. Hayley's also a member of 5 World Championship teams. Just last month, Hayley and the girls beat the US for her 5th title. She's played in over 100 games for the national team, recording over 250 points. And right after the break, ladies and gentlemen, right on that couch, superstar Hayley Wickenheiser. Don't go away. So, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, we are welcoming to Out of the Fog tonight arguably one of the greatest female hockey players of all time. Hayley Wickenheiser joins us. Hayley, real thrill to meet you. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Patty.
So you're in town because you're receiving an honorary degree from Memorial University, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. But because we have you for an extended amount of time, let's turn back the clock. And you're a small-town girl growing up in Shaunavon, Saskatchewan. And like most little girls, you had a pair of figure skates, but then traded them in for hockey skates and started playing with the boys' team. What drew you to hockey right away, though, Hayley?
I think it was just growing up in a small town, there's nothing to do but play hockey or curl, and I wasn't too interested in curling as a kid, and my dad was, and my mom were both at the local rink. They were teachers and involved with the local community, and I watched my dad play old-timers hockey and just really loved the game, and I remember asking to play, and they said yes, and my dad built a rink in our backyard for my younger brother and sister and myself, and that's where I learned how to play hockey, was on the outdoor rink.
And you didn't have a population base to have a big group of girls that were also interested in playing hockey. Nowadays, commonplace to see a girl come in the rink with a bag over her shoulder, but not so much then. You know, what kind of hurdles did you face when you had to go and play with boys' teams at such a young age?
You know, early on, not really very many, because I was just another body filling a spot on the team, which we needed in Shaunavon at the time. So I remember at a young age there were no problems at all. As I got a little bit older, there were some isolated incidents that I can remember of parents mostly, you know, shouting either from the stands or walking right into my dressing room telling me I should be playing figure skating and not playing hockey and things like that. But I think my parents sheltered me from a lot of that. My dad coached me till I was about 12 years old, and you know, really didn't become a big issue until I started to get older, and then obviously there's a difference between men and women.
When you get a bit older, it's easier to navigate through people telling me you can't do this or you shouldn't do that. But when you're a little kid, did it make you want to quit, or did it just make you want to play more? There
were times when I think if I didn't love the game or I wasn't so driven internally, I probably would have quit, because you reach a point where people continually saying, okay, well, you're not going to go to the NHL, there's nothing out there for women's hockey, and so I think I had just this inner love of the game, or I would have probably hung up my skates. And I think at times my mom and dad would have been happy if I would have just put my skates away and done something else, because they saw how upsetting I got over it. So I think that was probably really the only time. Otherwise, I was pretty dedicated to the game.
And so stayed in Shaunavon and played on the boys' team till you were 12, and then the whole family picks up and moves to Calgary. How'd that all come about? Was it that you wanted to move, or that the folks thought, we'll give her a better chance to play some girls' hockey in the big city?
No, it had nothing to do with hockey, actually.
Really?
No, my mom and dad were teachers, as I said, in a small town. My mom took time off to have kids and wasn't able to get a job, so we had to move, and Calgary was the last place they wanted to end up, in the big city, because we're a pretty small town people, and that's where we ended up, and it turned out to be a better opportunity for me playing hockey, but wasn't the initial plan.
It was obviously a better opportunity, but when you look back on it now, is that the stroke of good fortune maybe that allowed you to grow into the hockey player you became?
I think so. I mean, when we went to Calgary, that was sort of the time period when women's hockey really started to boom, right around 1990 and the first Women's World Hockey Championship. And I remember being at a hockey school in BC, my mom coming in and saying, you know, you'll never believe what happened. Women's hockey is an Olympic gold medal sport, or medal sport. And I sort of at that point had a real direction for myself in my career, and that's what I knew I could do if I sort of focused on it. So it definitely afforded me more opportunities growing up in the city, and I had a chance to play on the Canada Games team with Team Alberta and then the national team.
Scored the winner in the Canada Games, and MVP in the gold medal game, no less. Yeah. And then here you are, 15 years old, and High Chair Hayley gets put on the women's national team at the tender age of 15. Take us back to those days when you first walked in the room with the national club.
Well, it was pretty intimidating. I was 15. My mom and dad didn't want me to play on the national team. They thought I should go back and play another Canada Games, and I was pretty determined that that's what I wanted to do. So I remember just being in the dressing room with these women who were pretty much twice my age, and I was a grade 10 math student at the time, and my roommate was Margot Page, who was our assistant coach in Torino in 06, and she's a grade 10 math teacher. So it was just really bizarre to, you know, be getting tutored by your teammate. And but they treated me quite well, and called me High Chair Hayley. I was so young at the time, and just really made me feel part of the team. And I think at that age I learned what it took to win from players like France St. Louis and Stacey Wilson and Angela James. So it was a really important learning experience for me.
And of course, you say any hope of getting to the Olympics as a hockey player means you have to be on the national club. And here you are with the women's, but it's just not like the men's at all, is it? All these NHLers, they just fly off to the next World Championships or Olympics and come together as a club. But for the women, certainly in the earlier days, you lived together mostly year-round. Is that how it went for the women's national team?
Well, it does, mostly in the year before the Olympic Games. We still centralize. We get together 6 to 9 months before an Olympics to train full-time. And then when we're not together, we're scattered all across the country playing on our various club teams or NCAA schools or CIS schools. So it's becoming a little bit more professionalized in the sense that players have other teams they're playing on. But, you know, still when we get together with the national team, that's the best 20 players in Canada. It's the best hockey you're going to play and the most fun. You're treated well with the national team, and we get a chance to travel all across the country and all across the world.
And for your first Olympic Games in '98, you traveled all the way to Japan for the Nagano Olympics. And a little disappointment for the Canadian team that year. You went in there and it looked like Canada was the team to beat, and we had all the name brand hockey players and came up a little short. Walk us through how the Nagano experience was.
Well, looking back, it was, I guess, maybe one of the better things that could have happened to women's hockey, just because the Americans won the gold medal, and it was great for exposure in the States and things like that. But at the time, it was the most devastating moment of my career. I think it still is. Just remember sort of the feeling of disbelief when the buzzer's ticking down and you just are almost numb knowing you're out of time, and all the expectations, the first women's hockey event in the Olympics, and everybody thought Canada was going to walk away with it, but it wasn't the case. And I went into sort of an Olympic depression there for probably a good year, just kind of couldn't get away from it. I think I put a little bit too much pressure on the outcome, and I learned a lot from that experience, and also from knowing what it takes to win, and being able to just focus on that process of playing and getting better as a team every single day.
It's interesting that you say the Americans winning the gold was maybe a good for the women's hockey type of result, but also it set the stage for 4 years later in Salt Lake City. So the Americans win the gold, and then you guys are the only real two teams at the elite level probably in those days in women's hockey. And the Americans kind of had the upper hand for a while leading into Salt Lake and winning the World Championships and giving you guys a really hard time. But then we get to Salt Lake City, and I'm going to ask you once again to walk us through that tournament, because you're underdogs to the Americans, and here you come in their backyard, and they didn't know what was about to hit them. But just tell us how it all felt, how the team felt entering the Salt Lake Games.
Well, it was quite an Olympic year leading up to it, for sure. We lost every single game that we played against the Americans, so we were 0-8 heading into the gold medal final, and it was a year of a lot of turmoil. We had a player, Nancy Drolet, who was released halfway through the season and appealed, and we had a variety of sort of internal battles with injuries and bad play. We just couldn't seem to get it together, and so it's sort of, we felt like going into Salt Lake was us against everybody else. Even sort of some of the media in Canada started to really second guess if we were going to be able to win. And so we sort of took the underdog approach and learned to embrace the possibility that we might lose and what that could feel like. And none of us, I think being in '98, we had such a core group, none of us wanted to feel that feeling of losing again. And so we were able to go in, and 30 minutes of penalties in that final game, and refereeing like I've never seen before, and come away with the gold medal, and to beat the U.S. on their home soil. And in Salt Lake City, it was probably the biggest moment of my career, the most exciting moment of my career. And even to this day, just coming down here to do the interview, talking with a cab driver about the Olympics, he wasn't talking about Torino, he was talking about Salt Lake City. So it really stuck in Canadians' minds, and over 8 million people watched that game that day. It was a great moment for women's hockey.
And because a lot went into it, even for the men. I mean, we hadn't won Olympic gold in 50 years or whatever in the men's division, so there was a lot of pressure. Did the women feel the same pressure the men did? Because we're coming off the Hockey Summit where Gretzky and the Brain Trust get together and put the pressure back on Hockey Canada to develop the winning clubs. Did you guys feel the same pressure? Because certainly the men wore it on their face. There was immense pressure on them. Did you feel the same way in the women's club?
Oh, definitely. When you play for Canada, regardless if it's junior, women's, or men's, the expectation is gold or don't come home.
Yeah.
So we certainly feel that pressure every time we step on the international stage. And going into Salt Lake, you could feel it, the men's team and the women's team. There was sort of a camaraderie there, as there always is at the Olympics. We lived in the same building, we spent time together, and they certainly pulled for us, and a lot of the guys came to watch our games, and then when our event finished, we watched the last few days of their event. So there was a real sort of a bigger team going on there, and you pull for each other, and you're just proud to be Canadian.
Hayley, let's talk about the gold medal game for a little while, because any hockey fan worth their salt, that game has got to be way, way up on the list of the most important Canadian victories of all time.
Yeah.
For you guys, you were very diplomatic in 30 penalties or 30 minutes and penalties and whatnot. It was atrocious. It was a despicable game so far as refereeing went. The crowd was pro-American. You're in an American barn. At the end of the game, there's a pretty famous interview with Ron McLean and Don Cherry and yourself. Tell us about the story that was going in the room about the Canadian flag on the floor of the American dressing room. Is there any truth to it, for starters? And then tell us about what you guys thought that day.
Oh, I knew you were going to bring that up.
Sure.
It was a rumor. It was, I guess, confirmed by people that actually worked in the arena that the Americans had a Canadian flag in their dressing room, and we never thought it was on the floor or they were stepping on it or anything like that, but we sort of heard that they were using it as a source of motivation, that's who we're going to face in the final, and I sort of took it as a bit of an insult, and we used it as some team motivation. And after the game, I just, in the emotion of the moment and proud to be Canadian and of all the adversity that we faced all year long, I remember going and doing that interview with Don, and my sister Jane is there with nothing on, with a bikini in Canada painted all over, and my brother's got this cape of a Canadian flag, and they're screaming at me. And so it was just one of those moments, and I felt really proud to be a Canadian, and I meant what I said at the time, and I don't really have any regrets, although it's slightly embarrassing when I watch it today.
It shouldn't be. I don't know how the players must have felt, but certainly everyone in Canada. I just about came out of my skin that night. For me, one of the most memorable nights of all time. Let's keep going, though, before I get all worked up here. Hayley, in between Nagano and the Salt Lake Games, you take a big step in your career as a hockey player, and certainly you further the cause of women's hockey, and you take a crack at the men's game. You attended the Philadelphia Flyer rookie camp in '98 and '99. Let's go back to '98, how you got invited, how that all came to pass.
Well, after the '98 Olympics, I had been chatting with Bob Clark throughout the whole process leading up to '98, and he came up to me and invited me to the camp as a way of improving myself, challenging myself at the next level, and seeing what those guys go through to make it to the big leagues. So I just thought it was a great opportunity, and how could I say no to Bobby Clark? And he was serious about it, and I showed up at camp. It was 3 weeks long, and 6-8 hours a day of 2 a day on the ice, and they work them pretty hard there. A lot of these guys coming up through junior. It was with Todd Fedoruk and Simon Gagné and some pretty good players in that camp. So it really showed me, what it took to make it to that next level, and where I was at as a player, and just skating and competing with them. And I felt pretty good about the 2 years that I spent there.
How did the likes of Fedoruk and Gagné and the other players, how did they receive you when you showed up at camp that time? Because it's a pretty tight-knit crowd. Hockey players have a reputation around the dressing room for being one way or another. So how did the players actually receive you when you showed up at camp?
Well, it was interesting because we went around the room and we had to say your name and where you were from, and I had a baseball hat on, and I was the last one to speak, and they brought me in late. So when I said, all of a sudden I started talking, their heads just turned, and wow, that's a female talking, and they were pretty surprised. But at the same time, those are guys that are trying to impress. They're not worried about me. They're not worried about me trying to take their spot. They're trying to make the Philadelphia Flyers, and so they treated me very well. And it was a grueling camp. It was a lot of hard work, and you fall into bed at night, and there was really not a lot of time to spend chatting. It was all hard work, but I developed some good friendships there, and really I thought they treated me with respect.
Maybe they weren't worried about you taking their spot. I'll accept that, but you don't think they were at all concerned about Hayley Wickenheiser being on the ice? Who was the defenseman that had wanted Hayley to walk around him one-on-one? Who's the goalie who wanted you to, blast one up in the top corner pass? You didn't feel that at all, that they kind of resented that you were there?
No, they didn't resent it, but there's no question that they didn't want to get beat by a girl, that's for sure. And in all the men's hockey that I've played, that's always the case. You know that they're going to be giving their best. So if you manage to make a good play, you know that it was a good play. And But I didn't feel that from them at all. I felt that they were so concerned about themselves and making a good impression that they weren't worried about knocking my head off, and that wouldn't have been tolerated anyway at that camp.
So you made enough of an impression that eventually you land in Finland and become the first woman ever to compete in a men's pro hockey game. So you told us how you ended up in Philly at the pro camp. Did you solicit a pro game in Europe, or did it come looking for you?
It was a bit of both. I had expressed that I wanted to go and try to play professional men's hockey overseas, and not really knowing where. And through the grapevine, I eventually found out that there was a team in Finland that was in a league that was interested in me playing, and having connections with the Finnish Ice Hockey Federation through their women's team, decided that it would be a good opportunity, and away I went. I left my son and my husband Thomas behind, and went partway through the first season there in the second division, and turned out to be a great season. We won the championship, and things sort of went as well as I guess I could have expected.
Did they ever make you feel like you were maybe a novelty act, or something that they signed you just to maybe put some extra people through the turnstiles or anything like that, Hayley?
I knew that was going to be part of it, regardless of where I went, so I was very conscious of making sure that it was hockey first and the entertainment and business second. But being in Finland, it's a serious hockey country, and anybody that knows the game knows that it's a pretty good level of hockey over there. So I had low expectations as to how people would perceive me. I think the media honestly felt that I would step on the ice and fall flat on my face, that I wouldn't be able to play. But the first day, I remember there were probably about 100 members of the media around the rink, and when I stepped out onto practice, I could hear the chatter, and by the end of that first practice, they knew that I was there for real, and I was there to play, and I had to earn my spot and earn my way, but I felt I was respected as much as I could have expected.
Well, then on January 11th of 2003, you actually recorded your first point in a men's pro game. So,
yeah.
I mean, were you squeezing the stick pretty tight up into that point? Did you know in the back of your mind, listen, I've got to score a goal here, I've got to put some numbers on the board, or I'm just going to be this novelty act that I desperately don't want to be?
Yeah, I felt that. I definitely knew that people would be looking at the stats, and I was fortunate I got my first point in my first game. So I remember I don't know, into the first period, and as soon as I got that, it was like a big weight lifted off my shoulders, and I was just focusing on playing, and the stats took care of themselves, and I did all right, especially for the ice time that I had there, and I felt comfortable about being able to compete and being able to play, and just to be respected by your teammates is probably the most, the biggest accomplishment that you can have as a player.
And one more face-offs than any boy in the league that year anyway. That's good.
Yeah.
Why'd you leave Finland? How did all that end?
Well, I went back. I decided I'd try to go back for the next season. The team moved up to the first division, and I didn't realize, I guess, how difficult it would be to continue to be away from my family. My son was 2.5 at the time, and so that really took a toll. It was definitely tougher. We had the same coach, but the team was obviously not doing as well in the first division. And so, I think everything piled onto one, and the fact that I was really missing my family, I decided that, I think it was 4 months into the season, that I decided that I would go back. And I don't regret it. I really missed being with my son and being at home, but it was certainly something that made me a better player and just a better person all around.
Well, there's certainly more to Hayley Wickenheiser than on the ice. So obviously you went on, won another gold medal in Torino, 5 world championships, including just this past April where you beat the Americans for your 5th title. Let's move on to talk about some interesting charity work you're involved in, Hayley. And you're one of the Right to Play ambassadors, which is a marvelous organization. Tell us a bit about Right to Play.
Well, it is a marvelous organization. Right to Play is started by Johan Olaf Koss, who is the Olympic gold medalist and king of Norwegian speed skating, about 6 years ago. And it's an athlete-driven humanitarian group that works with children in some of the most impoverished parts of the world. They're in 22 different countries. And what it does is it links sport and play to development and the holistic development of kids. So we were just recently in Rwanda and with 3 other athletes, Canadian athletes, and had a chance to see some of the programs that they do on the ground.
So what does it make you feel like? Because here you say in Canada you're a girl playing hockey and you get to travel the world and you've got so many advantages here as Canadians. Yeah. What do you think when you look in the eyes of these little Rwandan kids? Do they walk right up to you and want to be part of the game of soccer you're playing, or how does it all go when you get there on the ground?
Well, it's really neat. I mean, the games and play, it's not that we just strike up a game and play any old games. The games are really geared towards HIV, AIDS awareness, malaria, teamwork, learning to trust people, which are all these things that these kids are facing coming out of the genocide, and rebuilding their country. And the thing that I realize is that kids are kids no matter where you are in the world, and everybody wants to feel love, they want to have attention, they want to play, and they can learn sometimes the best through just playing and being kids. And that's what I saw, was kids that were 13, 14 years old that lost their entire family, killed it right in front of their very eyes in the genocide, and here they are, orphans living on the street at night and coming during the day to participate with Right to Play. And they're getting empowered and they're getting educated, but they're learning just through being themselves and through playing, and the power that sport has. I think that maybe we don't put enough emphasis on that, and it's a natural fit for me as an athlete.
Well, I can't believe it, but we're quickly running out of time. Let's go through a few quick ones here at the end. I think you've already said Salt Lake's maybe your greatest moment as a hockey player, but where does the fact that you're only the second woman in history to compete in the Summer and Winter Olympics, you competed in the 2000 Games in Sydney as a member of the women's softball team, where does that accomplishment rank in your athletic feats?
I think it's definitely right up there. I always thought I'd go to the Olympics in softball before hockey, and grew up as a kid playing both, so it was a natural fit for me, and it was a great experience. The Summer Olympics is a totally different thing than the Winter Olympics, so much bigger and more exciting in a lot of ways.
One of your aspirations that I read all the time is that you'd like for there to eventually be women's professional hockey here for girls like you to play. Do you think it's ever going to happen, Hayley?
I think it will happen. I don't know if it'll happen in my playing career, but I'd love to be a part of it when it does happen. And it's just a matter of getting the best players in the world into one league, having some real leadership and corporate backing behind it. And I think it's going to happen someday, and I'll love to either watch it or play it when it does.
And I'll let you go on this one. 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. Is Hayley Wickenheiser going to be on Team Canada?
I'll be there, hopefully.
Well, good news for all hockey fans. Hayley, what a thrill. Thanks for coming on the show. We want you to stick around for the next segment for another couple of minutes. Can you do that?
I can do that.
Good stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to give us any comment about anything you heard from Hayley Wickenheiser, get in touch with us. Here's how you do that.
Welcome back to Out of the Vault and Out of the Fog. I have always enjoyed watching women's hockey because it's only ever visible, like for us to be able to watch on television, it's only ever visible at the highest levels of competition in the world for that sport. So every time you see it, the stakes are high. So there's passion and there's effort and it's engaging, and you have people like Hayley Wickenheiser or Cassie Campbell or Manon Rayon or Oulette. Like, there are so many top-tier, high-end hockey players that we get to watch. And now that we have a professional women's hockey league and I sit down and I watch it, I'm like, it's like this all the time. Nobody's skating around fighting for their ego. It's not about money.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Provide feedback on this show or find out how you can get involved. Email us at comments@rogerstv.com or visit our website.
Canada's Got Talent is getting ready for the biggest season ever.
874,620